Vincenzo opens with a nicely dressed man of Asian descent in the backseat of a vehicle on his way to a meeting. He looks out the window to see an airplane spraying some liquid, supposedly pesticide, over a vineyard as he drives through. The Asian man is Vincenzo Cassano, the consigliere of an Italian mafia family, and he happens to be meeting another man of questionable morals. The two men get into a back and forth over some document Vincenzo once signed on behalf of the Cassano family. However, it is revealed that the head of the Cassano family has recently passed, and in fact, that very day was his funeral, and yet Vincenzo was here taking care of business on the day of his father's funeral. Mafia man, seemingly emboldened by this recent development, spits in Vincenzo's face, metaphorically speaking, and racially insults him multiple times.
Vaffanculo. Tornatene nel tuo paese di merda. Sì. Arigato. Ma foto di cinesino.
Without showing any sign of losing his temper, Vincenzo stands up and tells the man he would regret his actions in Korean, a language the man doesn't speak. From here on, I will let what happens next speak for itself.
Ma questi pesticidi li danno la mattina alla sera? Ma non sono venuti la settimana scorsa a darli? Che cazzo? Ma... Merda. Ma questo non è pesticida. Vincenzo, me lo pagherai tu e tutti i Cassano! Forza!
This scene perfectly describes Vincenzo Cassano: brilliant, ruthless, decisive, and always 2 steps ahead of everyone else. And it serves as the perfect introduction to one of my favorite TV characters of the past decade. Over the course of the series, Vincenzo takes on a conglomerate trying to bully the residents of a building who have resisted the conglomerate's request to move so their home can be demolished and the area redeveloped. Vincenzo stands by the residents, going toe-to-toe in a battle of wits, danger, and intimidation in this war of the common man versus the ultra-rich. And yet, you can imagine my surprise when I called my best friend to discuss our thoughts on the series, only for her to come at me with the words, Vincenzo is not a hero. Specifically, she took issues with his portrayal and how the residents he protected idolized him despite being aware of his less than desirable characteristics. I, on the other hand, disagreed with this for reasons I shall explain later in the video. But that did get me thinking, what actually is a hero?
마피아의 콘실 리에리가 한국에?
The Oxford Dictionary defines a hero as, quote, a person who is admired for their courage, outstanding achievements, or noble qualities, end quote. So I guess, for example, we'd say Martin Luther King Jr. or Mahatma Gandhi. And or, quote, the chief male character in a book, play, or film who is typically identified with good qualities and with whom the reader is expected to sympathize, end quote. Other definitions refer to entities of superhuman qualities, such as those that appear in the Greek mythologies, or say, comic books. Very common examples in today's popular media would be entities such as Superman, Batman, Iron Man, Ant-Man, the Garbage Man, the Incredible Hulk, another Hulk, Black Widow, Aquaman. So many men, I bet you didn't notice me sliding the Garbage Man earlier. In order to understand whether or not Vincenzo fits into any of the aforementioned descriptions of a hero, I believe it is beyond relevant to first explore Vincenzo's story. So, fellow Earthlings, shall we?
Vincenzo Cassano.
Vincenzo Cassano?
Vincenzo, to me, simply put, is a tale of David versus Goliath. After the death of his adoptive father, who was the head of the Cassano family, Vincenzo is targeted by his adoptive brother due to fears that he, Vincenzo, might be better qualified to lead their mafia family and therefore might come after him for the throne. After killing the assassins and proving to his brother that he could have taken his life if he so wished, Vincenzo decides to leave Italy for good without taking much of anything. Why? Because he has a backup plan. See, unknown to anyone else alive but Vincenzo and one other person, Vincenzo had helped a paranoid Chinese criminal crime lord hide a ton of gold in a secret bunker beneath a mall, which also doubled as a residential building. The said crime lord was now dead, and so Vincenzo had the free run at the gold. There were just 2 problems though. 1. The building that stood over the gold had residents who both lived and ran their businesses there. And 2. A chaebol group was planning a redevelopment of the area and wanted the building demolished. The landlord who helped Vincenzo hide the gold had refused to sell the building to the conglomerate until he was forced to sign the handover papers at gunpoint. But the tenants still refused to leave, standing up to the intimidation tactics used by the conglomerate. You see, Vincenzo needed to find a way to delay the handover of the building long enough so he could extract the gold in the bunker before the building was demolished. But he also needed to extract the gold without the tenants and the chaebols finding out, which is very difficult to do when you literally have to break a hole in the ground of the building and then move out hundreds of gold bars and other valuables bag by bag. Not exactly the most inconspicuous thing in the war. And so began the battle of David versus Goliath. Vincenzo, with little to no resources but his knowledge of the law, his brains, and his incredible fighting ability, chooses to stand by the tenants against the money, power, inhumanity, and influence of the chaebols. As to whether or not he won the battle, I will let you find out for yourself by watching the show, as I believe this is one of the best K-dramas of the last decade. That doesn't matter to this topic though. What matters is the fact that by the end of the show, Vincenzo becomes somebody who is heavily admired by the residents of that very building. Admired. Does that word sound familiar? A man takes on a losing battle, choosing to side with the poor against a much more powerful and resource-rich opponent, trying to bully the poor for selfish gains. In my opinion, this shows a person of immense courage and nobility, and he did such a good job that the people he tried to help looked up to him for courage as a hero. So then, why would anyone even question Vincenzo's hero status? Well, the devil is in the details.
나의 목표는 이 건물을 무너뜨리는 것이다.
The first and most obvious bat to hit Vincenzo's hero status with are his intentions. If you were paying any attention, you would have heard me say that the reason Vincenzo stood by the tenants to fight against the chaebol was to buy himself enough time to extract the gold from the building, and this is very true. Were it not for this, Vincenzo had no reason to care about a random group of tenants living in a random building in Korea. In essence, you could very well say Vincenzo took advantage of the plight of these poor people to fulfill his own personal agenda. That certainly calls into question the nobility and courage of his actions. I mean, I'm pretty sure you and I would turn into prime John Wick if we stood to gain hundreds of millions of dollars. The other massive knockback against Vincenzo are the methods he used to battle the rich and powerful conglomerates he was fighting against. In case you haven't realized from my description of Vincenzo so far, he is anything but a saint. Vincenzo was a consigliere to an Italian mafia family, and as such, did things in a way fitting of a respected member of the mafia. This means in order to get the upper hand, Vincenzo regularly lied, deceived, used people, was ruthless and unforgiving. Not only did he personally break the law multiple times, his influence was so powerful that he eventually rubbed off on those around him, resulting in them compromising their morals as well, with some of the people most adamant about doing things by the law eventually becoming accessory to murder. Oh, that's right. Did I mention that Vincenzo killed people? I mean, that isn't exactly a disqualifier for anyone familiar with action movies. Action heroes commit murder all the time, with us rooting for them to do so. However, what sets Vincenzo aside is not that he killed, but who and how he killed. For example, at some point, a group of guys are sent after Vincenzo. Vincenzo, obviously being too smart for them, captures them and interrogates them, eventually promising them their freedom if they told him what he wanted to know. He also said to his allies who helped him capture these men that he intended to fulfill his promise. But you see, not only did he end up killing the men after they cooperated, he also lied to his allies about murdering the men. Things like this happened multiple times throughout the series. He lied not just to his adversaries, but to his own allies as well. Vincenzo didn't kill because he needed to kill. Vincenzo killed many times in rather spectacular ways in order to make a point to his opponents. It's like he was trying to say, you have messed with the wrong man, there will be no mercy. And that sounds exactly like the kind of thing a villain would do, doesn't it?
그래. 어디 깽값 한번 물게 해봐 이씨. 됐다.
Alright, so we've covered the major points against Vincenzo's hero status. However, I feel it would be remiss of me to not add some context or rebuttal to the points raised, starting with his intentions. Yes, it is true that Vincenzo inserted himself into the ongoing conflict between the residents and the chaebols for his own personal gain. However, it is also true that over time, Vincenzo did start to actually care about the residents that he was fighting for and side by side with. As for why, I think it would help to tell you a very important aspect about Vincenzo's character. As I've said for the 50th time already, Vincenzo was a former mafioso, and as such, he held values associated with members of the Italian mafia, and so Vincenzo was very much a man of principle. And this was the driving force behind most of his decisions in the show. He chose to keep fighting the chaebols even after extracting his gold because he felt they had gone too far in their actions against the tenants and other civilians in their bid to achieve their goal. It shouldn't surprise you to know that the chaebols were less than innocent and had been responsible for the loss of many and many innocent lives. He decided to kill the men as I mentioned earlier because they had tried to kill him, and he lied to his allies because he preferred to not get them involved. See, he was the principled mafioso, not them. Could he have handed them over to the police? Yeah, maybe. But we are talking about the police force in a corrupt country that allowed the conglomerate get away with so much destruction of lives. The same police force that was later used to try and frame Vincenzo himself for murder. Also, let's not act like you and I have not rooted for heroes who have acted themselves as judge, jury, and executioner. I could literally list names for days. And by the end, Vincenzo decided his early retirement plan would heavily involve taking down other powerful people who abuse their power and privilege to bully and destroy the lives of those less fortunate. That sounds very much like a courageous person with noble aspirations to me. That sounds like a hero.
형수님, 대신 재미난 거 보여줄게요. 8K처럼 생생한 장면으로. 3, 2, 1.
Vincenzo is a ruthless, deceitful, murderous, and highly principled man, but he is also a person who used all of those qualities to defend people who were powerless to defend themselves, and he plans to keep doing so. Let's face the facts here. No matter how you feel about Vincenzo, he never killed anyone who hadn't come after him, he never compromised on his principles, and it is very clear to me that if Vincenzo played by the books, he would have been long dead. I mean, this literally happened to the lawyer who initially led the resistance against the chaebols, and this is true for most of our movie heroes. Most of our heroes break the law in order to achieve their goals. It is difficult to fight fair against someone who will constantly throw sand in your face and kick you in the balls without facing any penalties for doing so. I also think that a hero can be a very personal thing. Elon Musk might be a hero to me because he's leading the electric car revolution, but to you, he might just be a rich sports billionaire with terrible political views who just says whatever he wants without giving it enough thought. This whole debate came up because my best friend disliked how some of the residents looked up to Vincenzo, in fact idolizing him in some cases, even after being aware of some of his less than ideal actions and characteristics. But I think if someone basically saved and impacted our lives in the manner that Vincenzo did theirs, you and I would not think of that person as anything less than a hero, despite being cognizant of their flaws, because in reality, heroes do not have to be perfect, and there is no such thing as a perfect hero. My best friend who kicked off this whole debate thinks Vincenzo is an anti-hero, and while I didn't feel this way watching the show, reading the definition of an anti-hero, it does fit certain aspects of the descriptions given, but I still do not totally agree with this categorization of Vincenzo, as I can make arguments for why it just doesn't quite fit. Let me know if you side with me or my best friend on this. But you know what? Maybe it doesn't matter at all. Maybe it doesn't matter that Vincenzo is a person with strong mafioso principles that he lives by. Maybe it doesn't matter that some of his actions were morally dubious and sometimes downright unlawful. Maybe, just maybe, what matters is that he chose to use those principles and qualities to help those who couldn't help themselves. This has been another Random Thoughts session. Till next time, take care.
Hi. So I said Vincenzo is not a hero because he lied, he killed people, he did a lot of unethical things or criminal things. So while people might have applauded him because the people he hurt, the people that were disturbing them, doesn't make the things he did right anyway. So this type of character you call an anti-hero. He's not a hero. He didn't do noble things.